Hello YouTube, Bane666 here. So anyway, this is going to be the third in this series of videos, and hopefully the last, because I've got other things I want to move on to, and I think I've spent enough time on this topic and covered everything that there is to say, apart from the last three things in this video. So the first segment will be an update on the Dawn situation, which is going to be very interesting. The second will be my reply to Russian Deadpool's reply to my reply to his reply, or something like that. I'm confused at this point, but anyway, hopefully I'll get through that quickly and move on to the third segment. Now, the third segment I originally intended to have in Propaganda of Toxic Feminism Part 48, but as I was putting that together, there was just not enough room. So I then started to put together an addendum for that episode, but before I could finish it, I got a reply from Russian Deadpool, as well as a reply from Dawn, which led to this series. So as I never got around to finishing that addendum, I'm going to put it on the end of this video, and of course that addendum was going to be my reply to the comments that Dawn made about me in the interviews she did with Russian Deadpool. Some of her claims are quite interesting, so it's going to be fun pulling them apart. But before we get to the third segment, we've got two others to get through first, so let's get stuck into it. Now, you may remember in the last installment of this series, towards the end, I proposed that Dawn might have a sock puppet account. Now, I didn't have any solid evidence for that at the time. It was just a sneaking suspicion based on a hell of a lot of circumstantial evidence, a hell of a lot of coincidences. Well, there has been a little bit of an update. You see, the account I suspected of being Dawn's sock puppet account was an account known as Obsidian Forest. And a short time after I uploaded my video, Obsidian Forest shut down her YouTube account. Now, the very strange thing, and I'm sure this is just another coincidence, but the very strange thing is, at exactly the same time that Obsidian Forest shut down her YouTube account, Dawn also shut down her YouTube account. Now, I'm sure that's just a huge coincidence. What a shame. Dawn got caught out lying. Yes, I think we can confirm now that Obsidian Forest was in fact Dawn's sock puppet account, and that Dawn is in fact a liar. And she's just proven it. But anyway, on to the next segment. Now, as a rule, I don't make anything said to me privately public, and that includes conversations on Skype. But as you can clearly see here, Deadpool has said that I should feel free to quote him. So considering that, it's not an issue that I'm showing his comments to me. Like I said, normally this isn't something I would do. Normally if someone says something to me in private on Skype, I consider that to be a private conversation. But he's made it clear that I can quote him, so here we go.
Haven't seen your new video. Have seen your fans. If I wasn't clear, my objection was your attack against her as an individual.
Okay, so I should point out that he sent me this comment after my first reply to him, if I remember correctly. And as I've pointed out already, I did not attack her individually, at least in my original video. What I questioned was her accusations towards the men's rights movement, and yes, I did put forward the possibility that Dawn was a liar based on her illogical assertions. And as you saw earlier in this video, I think it's been proven that Dawn is in fact a liar. I would consider anyone who has a sock account and who masquerades as someone they're not to be a liar. That's clearly deception. So yeah, I stand by the accusation that Dawn is a liar. In fact, I believe it more strongly now than ever before. Next.
Not her ignorance of the MRM, which we took every opportunity to challenge her on.
I don't know if you did take every opportunity to challenge her on it. Yes, you did ask questions, that's true. You did say repeatedly, how do you know they're MRAs? And when she gave you vague answers with no clear evidence to support it, you just accepted it. That to me is not challenging her at every opportunity. Next.
In context, and given the record of our public works, it should be plain we hold no prejudice against the MRM.
Yes, look, it is true that you have done some positive work towards the men's rights movement. That's true. But then we have things like the chat you did with Dawn, which would suggest otherwise. Now, I don't mind you criticising aspects of the men's rights movement, but when you do so, please let it be something legitimate. I think that's only fair, right? I mean, I have no problem with you promoting those aspects of the men's rights movement you agree with, and criticising those aspects you disagree with. Just make sure that those disagreements, those criticisms, aren't full of bullshit. And to be honest, the videos I questioned did come across as a gotcha moment. Next.
Further, obviously even she did not think all tech MRAs. No violent people are allowed to work there. They would have to pass a police background check. They would have to go through 6 weeks of training before they are allowed to engage in any shelter-related activities, never mind mentoring the young. There was no contradiction. Feel free to quote.
Yeah, there most definitely was contradictions. Dawn painted the supposed MRAs in her local area as violent men, violent towards their partners, people who have been through the court system for violence, people who have been violent to other people in her community, people who are known to be violent by everyone in her community. Now, if this characterization is true and accurate and not an exaggeration or a complete work of fiction, then these are not the people you would ask to work at a shelter, especially with children. Even more so considering Dawn herself says that their only goal is to work against the shelter system, that they are actively trying to end her work and shelters. She actually uses that word, to end. Why would you ask a group of people like that to come and volunteer at a shelter and work with children? Let me give you a metaphor. Let's say, for argument's sake, that you worked in a synagogue in a small country town, and there was a local group which you believed were white nationalists, were neo-Nazis, were anti-Semitic. Most of them were like that. The vast majority of them were like that. Would you then go and ask that group to come and volunteer at the local synagogue, knowing that their very worldview is opposite of yours? That their very worldview, as you believe it, is bent on your destruction? They're the last people you would ask, even if you did a police check on them. I mean, it's just crazy. So we're going to have to agree to disagree here, Russian Deadpool. I give you credit enough to be intelligent enough to know that this is a contradiction. I'm guessing you just don't want to admit it because, well, Dawn fucked up, didn't she? But like I said, I think it's something we're going to have to agree to disagree on. And I'll let people make up their own minds.
Oh, and as far as the MRAs versus shelters clip, we made a video clip of her views with links to the full material.
Yeah, this is true. You did link to the full material, and I did sit through all 5 hours of that material, almost 5 hours, and I used many parts of that material. The thing is, though, the clip did come across as a gotcha moment, And I think most people watching it didn't then go and sit through the full 5 hours of the source material. And even if they did, the context of that source material really was no different than the gotcha clip. But it is true, you did link to the source material, which is far more than most people do, and I do give you credit for that. To be honest, I wish more people would link to their source material. Next.
All while adding our own annotations in the description which debunked her generalizations, since we linked MRM groups that do actual good work even if her unproven MRA group existed in the way she said.
Okay. I guess then we should have a look at these MRA groups which are approved by the skeptic feminists. Let's click on the link of the first one and see what we get. And it takes us to a web page called MenEngage Alliance, working with men and boys for gender equality. That doesn't sound too bad so far. Let's have a read of their About Us page and see what they're about.
We are a global alliance made up of dozens of country networks spread across many regions of the world, hundreds of non-governmental organizations, as well as UN partners. MenEngage members work collectively and individually toward advancing gender justice, human rights and social justice to achieve a world in which all can enjoy healthy, fulfilling and equitable relationships in their full potential. Through our country-level and regional networks, MenEngage seeks to provide a collective voice on the need to engage men and boys in gender equality, to build and improve the field of practice around engaging men in achieving gender justice, and advocating before policy makers at the local, national, regional and international levels.
Well, okay, that doesn't sound too bad, although the term social justice is a bit of a concern, but let's, for argument's sake, say that they just mean social justice in the broader sense of the meaning and not in the typical way that social justice warriors use the term. So let's for now give them the benefit of the doubt. Let's keep an open mind, okay, because the rest of the stuff didn't sound too bad. And let's go on to have a closer look at their core principles.
Gender as relational. We believe that men, along with women, should be engaged in achieving gender equality and in advancing the rights, health and well-being of women and girls.
Well, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because, the skeptic feminists are putting this forward as a positive men's rights group, yet the very first principle that they have is concerned about the well-being of women and girls. Now, obviously, I think we all should be concerned with the well-being of women and girls. It's just I think we should also be concerned about the well-being of men and boys. And considering this is meant to be a men's rights group, I would think that they would focus more on the issues of men and boys, those issues which are often ignored or diminished or dismissed by the general public. But it seems that they're only focused, at least so far, it seems they're only focused on women and girls, which would make me think that they're not a men's rights group, they're actually a women's rights group. But let's keep an open mind and see what else they got to say.
Questioning men's violence against women. We are dedicated to engaging men and boys to end violence against women and to questioning or challenging violent versions of manhood. It's
not looking too good, is it? So they're not interested in talking about violence in general, or they're not interested in talking about women's violence towards men and boys, or even men's violence towards other men. Their only concern seems to be male violence against women. Now, once again, yes, we should be concerned about male violence against women, but why can't we also talk about male victims? Why is that such a hard thing for us to do? And talk about female victimizers as well. Once again, this would suggest to me strongly that this is not a men's rights group. This is a women's rights group made up of men. There is a difference, Russian Deadpool. But there's more points to go through, so let's have a look at them.
Promoting existing UN mandates. We are dedicated to engaging men and boys to fulfill the mandates, statements of action, and principles of the International Conference on Population and Development, the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the Commission on the Status of Women Statement's 48th session, and the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and working collectively to encourage governments to do the same.
So once again focused on women's issues, not on men's issues. Now, once again, let me stress, I'm not saying these issues aren't important, just that if it's a men's rights group, their focus should actually be on men's issues and men's rights. Or at very least, include men's issues and men's rights. I mean, I've got no problem with them being advocates for both the issues of men and women. That I would accept. But it seems, at least so far, they're only focused on the issues and rights of women, which is very strange considering they're meant to be a men's rights group. But there's still more to go, so let's continue.
Engaging men as caregivers. We are dedicated to promoting more equitable participation by men and boys in caregiving, the care of children and domestic tasks.
Wow, this is one I can actually consider to be a men's issue. Yeah, I would agree with this. I think it would be good if men took part in more caregiving and more child raising. The thing is that if we have a shift in society where men are doing more childcare at home and as well as doing more domestic tasks, then that means that women need to pick up the slack and do more work hours, right? I mean, that would be fair. You can't expect men to work more hours in their job and then come home and do equal amounts of childcare and domestic tasks, which would mean women need to work more overtime, they need to work longer hours, and they need to put more work into their careers. Now, generally speaking, men are more willing to do this than women. Generally speaking, women tend to have a healthier balance of work and domestic life. And I think it's going to be a tough job to convince women that they need to spend less time with their children and more time at work. If we look at divorce, for example, most women want custody of their children, sole custody of their children, and many of them aren't even interested in shared custody. So we need to change society's attitudes to fix this, and society includes women. Getting men to be willing to spend more time with their kids and less time at work, that's only half the problem. The other half is getting women to accept men doing that and for women to pick up the slack at work. And on average, that's not happening. Next.
Working as allies with existing women's rights organizations. We are committed to working as allies with women and women's rights organizations to achieve equality for women and girls.
So this is supposedly a men's rights group which is focused on women's rights, which would mean that they're not a fucking men's rights group at all. I'm sorry, Russian Deadpool, but this is not a men's rights group. This is a women's rights group. This is a group of men who are focused on women's rights. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. If they want to spend their time doing that, that's fine. I've got no problem with men advocating for the rights of women. But please, dude, just don't go around claiming that this is the type of men's rights activism that you support, because it's not fucking men's rights activism. Fuck. But let's go on. There's still some more points. Maybe there's something more to support men's rights. Let's give it another chance.
Sexual diversity and sexual rights. We are dedicated to promoting cultures of masculinity that respect sexual diversity and the sexual and reproductive rights of all, and that engage men so that concerns for reproductive health and contraception are more evenly shared between men and women.
Yep, okay, I'll give him this one. This is fair. There is an issue, though, here, and that is the feminists who are actually working against this. You would think that feminists would be happy about the development of a male pill, for example, but unfortunately many of them aren't. Let's have a look at an article from the Telegraph.
5 reasons why the male pill isn't coming anytime soon. Don't hold your breath for the male pill. From Big Pharma to feminism, there are too many reasons why your doctor won't be prescribing it for a long time yet. 5. Many feminists don't like the idea. At the risk of having fecal matter posted through my letterbox, one of the other big barriers to the male pill has been feminism. Granted, we're talking big, sweeping generalizations here, but history speaks for itself. See, while the latest scientific breakthroughs may be new, the general concept of a male pill is not. In the 1970s, Brazilian endocrinologist Dr. Elzimar Coutinho developed one of the first ever male pill prototypes. Made from all natural cottonseed, it didn't go down too well with pharmaceutical companies for obvious reasons, hardly a money spinner if the local health shop can produce a no-frills version for half the price, but it also suffered social resistance. When launched at the 1974 World Health Conference in Budapest, religious groups voiced concern and feminists staged a boycott, storming Coutinho's presentation and demanding that only women not men should be making choices about parenthood. Think attitudes have changed? Don't be so sure. Not long ago feminist site Jezebel dubbed the idea, "whore pills for men," while Angela Phillips wrote in The Guardian that, "the bigger issue behind the development of a contraceptive pill for men is that women risk losing control of conception." She added, "While we are transfixed by the idea that men might at last be able to share the loss of libido, weight gain, and general grumpiness which so often accompany pill taking for women, we are in danger of losing track of the bigger issue, control. The pill gives women control of the fertility tap. She decides when to turn it off, but just as important, she decides, after discussion we hope, when to turn it back on." Which, funnily enough, is precisely why men need their own version. Wouldn't it be better if pregnancies were planned by both parties, all the time, rather than control resting solely with women? That really shouldn't be such a bitter pill to swallow.
Now, I have to give credit where credit is due, and I suspect, knowing Russian Deadpool as I do, that he would agree with me that these type of feminists are full of shit. I hope I'm right in making that claim. I'd be surprised if he actually supported that type of feminism that is somehow against male reproductive rights. Unfortunately, there is a number of feminists out there who are exactly like that.
It's feminists. Are you kidding me? Women would love nothing more than for men to take some responsibility. I don't think any woman would trust a guy who says, "Oh yeah, I'm on the pill, baby." But it's not because feminists are saying, no, men shouldn't have a birth control pill. It's because so far they haven't found a safe one yet.
But let's go back to MenEngage.
The vulnerabilities of men. We believe that the specific needs and experiences of men and boys have often not been well understood nor taken into account in the development of public policy or professional practice across a wide range of areas. We believe that men and boys are made vulnerable by non-equitable and violent versions of manhood.
See, you had me right up until that last sentence. Yeah, look, I would agree that violent versions of manhood are not good, but that's not the only issue here. The problem is gynocentrism. The problem is that we have a high level of concern about the issues affecting women, as we've seen through this whole list so far. Yet we have the attitude that men are disposable. That is what affects public opinion and public policy. And although I would agree that violent versions of manhood are not good, when we have feminists only talking about the violence of men as a means of demonizing males and masculinity while ignoring the growing levels of female violence in the community. It's not about equality. It's not about dealing with issues. It's about demonization. It's about placing all the blame on one gender. Now, yes, it is true that most violence in society is committed by men, and most of the victims of that violence are in fact men. Yet most of the concern is about women, and women's violence is ignored. So when we look at male violence and we demonize males and masculinity, we're not looking at the whole picture. And in fact, by only focusing on male violence or versions of violent manhood, we ignore and excuse the women who commit similar acts. And in fact, we excuse it and allow them to get away with it. So yeah, there is room for discussion on violent versions of masculinity, but we need to look at the whole picture as well. Next.
Engaging men from a positive perspective. We believe that all people would benefit from recognition of these issues and appropriate action to transform non-equitable and violent versions of manhood and redress power inequalities related to gender. We seek to build examples of men already acting in more gender-equitable and non-violent ways.
So here we have the very common argument from feminists that if they actually admit that men have issues, it's usually revolving around toxic masculinity, and they don't seem willing to admit that there are other factors. Now, yes, once again, I'll admit that there are negative aspects of masculinity, as there are also negative aspects of femininity. I believe both have positives and negatives. There's no denying that. Well, at least I'm not denying that. But there are other factors which are affecting men and men's issues. And yeah, I'm going to use that word again, gynocentric. If a woman is homeless, she gets special consideration in many cities around the Western world because she's a woman, even though the majority of the homeless are in fact male. We are outraged by female circumcision, and we should be. Yet male circumcision is often excused, or diminished, or dismissed, or even laughed at when it's brought up as an issue. Men get longer sentences for exactly the same crimes committed by females, because we have a bias in which we see men as more negative, more violent, more guilty, and females as more innocent. We tend to excuse away bad behaviour from females as, well, it wasn't entirely her fault. There must be a man somewhere that forced her to do it. And society laughs at male victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. Society in general dismisses these men. I think the vast majority of society accepts that women can be victims of rape and domestic abuse, but it's a different story when we try to talk about men. None of these things have to do with violent versions of manhood. They all have to do with gynocentrism. They all have to do with gender roles, which generally aren't tackled by feminists, despite the fact that they claim to be against gender roles. It seems that some gender roles are more important than others. Strange. But let's continue.
Participation. We will strive to include and take into account the voices of men and women, boys and girls, at the community level, and the voices of community-level NGOs.
Okay, fair enough. That's good. They should be listening to both men and women. I have no problem with that. As a men's rights activist, I have no problem with listening to the views of women. In fact, some of the most popular and intellectual MRAs are in fact women. I'm happy to listen to them anytime, based on their arguments, not based on their gender. Unfortunately, there is a fairly sizable aspect of feminism which demands that men shouldn't have a voice in feminism. Now that's fine, they can do whatever they want in their movement. Personally though, it's not something I would be proud of. But let's continue.
Non-discrimination. We will actively advocate against, question and seek to overcome sexism, social exclusion, homophobia, racism or any form of discriminatory behavior against women or gay, bisexual, transgender men and women, or on any other basis.
Now, this is very revealing, because it exposes the claim often made by feminists that, sure, men have issues, gay men have issues, black men have issues, transgender men and women have issues, but, normal men don't. Which is strange, because it's not only these men who are circumcised, it's not only these men who get longer sentences, it's not only these men who are homeless, it's not only these men who commit suicide, it's not only these men who lose custody of their children. In fact, if you think about it, most fathers who don't get custody of their children are straight. But intersectionality and third-wave feminism can only talk about men's issues if that man is somehow a minority. If the man is gay or trans or black or handicapped or something like that, then it's okay to talk about those issues. But if it's just your normal average man who was violated as a newborn baby and had his human rights violated by having a part of his body amputated without his permission, well, because he's not a minority, well, it doesn't really matter, does it? Obviously this is bullshit. There are issues that affect all men in general, regardless of sexuality, regardless of race. But unfortunately the intersectionality lens which third wave feminism looks through, well, it creates groups. And some of these groups, well, it's perfectly okay to talk about their issues. And the others, well, we can't possibly touch on them. So let's go on to have a look at the second group that the skeptic feminists linked to. It's a group called NOMAS. So let's have a look at their history.
While other kinds of men's movements have appeared in the U.S. over recent years, the anti-feminist, men's rights, the mythopoetic, and most recently, the conservative Christian Promise Keepers, the anti-sexist men movement was the first. The National Organization for Men Against Sexism, NOMAS, began as a loose-knit spontaneous social movement in the early 1970s. With the beginning of the second wave of American feminism in the late 1960s, anti-sexist men's groups, articles, and other writing began to appear. In 1975, a group of men who were enrolled in a women's studies course at the University of Tennessee held what they announced as the first National Conference on Men and Masculinity, in Knoxville, Tennessee. The following year, a second National M&M Conference was held at State College, Pennsylvania. Over the next 5 years, national M&M conferences were held in Des Moines, St. Louis, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, and Boston. During this period there was little formal organization, but an M&M ideology developed which was strongly pro-feminist and gay affirmative, while also emphasizing traditional male sex role restrictions, and the need to enhance men's personal and emotional lives. The M&Ms, however, clearly rejected the male self-interest philosophy of the men's rights movement, which appeared as an anti-feminist backlash in the U.S. in the late 1970s.
Self-interest philosophy. Now that's an interesting term. I wonder what they mean by that. Does that mean talking about men's issues? Is that somehow self-interest? I mean, I guess it technically is, but how is that a bad thing? Let's continue. Maybe they explain it.
At the 1981 M&M in Boston, it became clear that some kind of structure was needed if the M&M tradition was to continue. A national membership organization was formed, and in 1982 its members elected an 18-person national council to provide a collective leadership to the anti-sexist men's movement. In 1983 the name, National Organization for Changing Men, NOCM, was chosen. In 1990 the present name, NOMAS, was adopted.
The National Organization for Changing Men. Yeah, let's continue.
In 1992, Anti-racism was added as a major commitment of NOMAS, together with pro-feminism, gay affirmation, and enhancing men's lives. Supported and co-sponsored by NOMAS since 1982, the national M&M conferences have occurred annually. The 2010 conference, in Anaheim, California, was the 35th National Conference on Men and Masculinity. NOMAS today is guided by a national council and a larger national leadership collective. Its most basic values and ideology are summarized in its Statement of Principles, which has been copied by pro-feminist men's groups in Europe and elsewhere. Women as well as men are welcome as members. To encourage activism and analysis across a range of anti-sexist men's issues, NOMAS now has national task groups or resource persons in the following areas.
Okay, so they give a list of men's issues, so let's have a look at them and break it down. So the first one on the list is child custody. Yeah, that's a fair point. I can agree with that. Eliminating racism is the next one. Yep. Now the third one, ending men's violence. Not ending violence in general, or not ending violence against men, but ending men's violence in particular. The next one is fathering. Yep, that's fair. Then we have homophobia, heterosexism, and LGBT affirmative. Yep. Men, culture and art. Yep, that seems fine. Men's health and mental health. Yep, good. Men and spirituality. Yep. Men's Studies Association. I'm a little bit cautious about men's studies from a feminist perspective, but let's continue. Sex trafficking, pornography, and the commercial sex industry. Okay, it'd be interesting to see what their views are on these things. Next, pro-feminism. Yep, I think that much is pretty clear. And the last one is reproductive rights, and we've already covered that. So let's have a look at NOMAS frequently asked questions, because I think there's something here which really sums up the group.
Why a strong emphasis on anti-male violence? Male violence remains a huge, unending global reality to almost all women and children, and to a great many men, perhaps even to most men.
Okay, so the demographic which is the largest victim of male violence is actually other men, yet their focus is women and children. They do mention men, but they seem to be a bit of an afterthought. Now, if we're talking about violence towards children, their focus should actually be on female violence, because women are more likely to hurt and murder their children than men. So it's strange, once again, that they would focus on male violence when it comes to children. It's also interesting that they put women ahead of children in their sentence here. Now, I know that might seem pedantic, but it does seem to be a common trend. But let's continue.
Our planet today bleeds from male violence. Confronting male violence against women, in its many forms, for example rape, assault, domestic abuse, harassment, stalking, street hustling, is neither easy, nor especially popular with many men.
Oh, okay, they seem to have forgotten the children and the men who are victims of male violence here, and now they're just talking about the women. Yeah. They also seem to have forgotten the children who are victims of female violence and the men who are victims of female violence. Not to mention the women who are also victims of female violence, but yeah, let's just focus on men being the bad guys and women being the victims, shall we? After all, that's called feminism. Next.
But we feel that confronting male violence should be a core responsibility and concern of men who would think of themselves as feminist.
Here's an idea. Why don't we just talk about violence in general? Why don't we just say that anyone who is violent against anyone else, unless it's self-defense, is wrong? How's that? Do you think maybe we could focus on that message, and that way it won't diminish victims of violence like men, and that way it won't demonize masculinity? Next.
We are proud that NOMAS has taken a national leadership role in several key areas of confronting men's abusiveness, such as domestic violence, groups for convicted abusers, men's abuses of child custody proceedings, etc.
Men's abuse of child custody proceedings. Wow, that's an interesting one. So fathers wanting custody of their children is somehow abusing child custody proceedings? Yeah, and this is supposedly a men's rights group. Next.
We have had Men and Masculinity Conference presentations on understanding rape statistics, on femicides, on laboratory research on men's aggression. NOMAS proudly endorses the New York model for batterer programs and its analysis of batterer intervention in the court system. The board president of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, NCADV, is a core member of the NOMAS national leadership. NOMAS has also recently collaborating in creating and disseminating a reproductive coercion toolkit for women and activists in all settings where women come for services. We are proud of what we have achieved and worked for around men's violence against women, and in many other gender-linked, role, power and justice-related areas.
Notice again they're talking about men's violence towards women, and they've left out children and other men. Funny that. And of course they're only focused on men's violence and women as victims. Yeah, they're not interested in discussing female violence, for example. Yeah, in fact they're only interested in female issues, it seems. And you know, this is the typical bullshit we get from feminism, where men are the problem and feminism is the solution. You know, the typical shit where they only see the negatives of masculinity and only the positives of femininity, instead of, you know, actually acknowledging that there are positives and negatives of both. Let's take a look at another one.
What is NOMAS's vision of what masculinity could or should be? At the very early 7th M&M, one workshop was titled, What is Positive in Traditional Masculinity? It discussed some traditionally masculine qualities, such as intelligence, courage, determination, logic, self-confidence, etc. It is not difficult to point to some ways in which traditional masculinity includes a number of positive traits. One can then envision a new masculinity, incorporating those positive ones, and none of the dysfunctional, destructive traits of traditional masculinity. But it is also important to see that there is nothing inherently masculine about any of these positive human qualities. Women and girls can and do possess all of them.
Oh, okay, this is an interesting argument. They're saying that positive masculinity isn't inherently masculine, and that, you know, these are just positive traits. But negative masculinity is inherently masculine. I'm sorry, but you can't have it both ways. Either both the positive and the negatives can be non-gendered, or they are gendered. Now, I tend to lean towards non-gendered, because I think that both males and females are capable of both positive and negative behaviour. Now, in some instances, that behaviour may be slightly different amongst men and women. It may be gendered. Some of this may be cultural, and some of it may be genetic. And there may, in fact, be trends towards masculinity and femininity. Of course, this is all very, very complex, and it changes dramatically from one person to the next. So all we can do is talk in broad brushstrokes. Nothing is really set in concrete. But it is interesting that when they talk about negative masculinity, it is only prescribed to the masculine, but when they talk about positive masculinity, they have to broaden it to include these traits also being feminine. I really do think that speaks volumes. Next.
Psychological androgyny, comfort with having a wide range of skills, is a proven reality, and more psychologically androgynous people have been found to be better functioning. Therefore many of us now favor the more advanced ideal of essentially forgetting all the old gender role requirements, of moving beyond all the traditional sex role assignments and stereotypes, and encouraging each person to have whatever personality we may choose, or aspire to.
Okay, so moving beyond all the stereotypes, except those negative stereotypes of masculinity which you promote constantly on your website, right? Is that what you're saying? Next.
Thus, in some real sense, we would be content for the entire cultural construct of masculinity to gradually fade away altogether.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this last sentence, to be honest with you, because I do agree that traditional gender roles tend to be restrictive for both men and women, and that we as a society should not be restricted by them. Our society has evolved and changed to the point where now we don't have to be restricted by those gender roles. Men don't have to be the protector provider. Men don't have to be disposable. We can do away with this stuff. However, I do think there are, I guess, what you could call gender trends, where most men, not all, but most men lean towards the masculine, and most, not all, females lean towards the feminine. And I do think what we call masculine and what we call feminine, although part of it is most definitely a cultural construct, I wouldn't say all of it is, though. There is definitely a gender component there. Now, I'm not saying that this gender component is the main factor or the most important factor or the only factor, but I do think that it is a factor. Despite what many feminists say, that gender is entirely a cultural construct, I think it's much, much more complex than that. So yeah, I do think we should do away with gender roles, but that does not necessarily mean doing away with masculinity altogether. I think if we do away with traditional gender roles, then men have to redefine ourselves. We need to rediscover or redefine what masculinity is. I don't think that means doing away with it entirely. Now, hopefully I've made a pretty convincing case so far that NOMAS is not a men's rights group, and they are not interested in the issues affecting men or issues of men's rights. They are in fact a group of male feminists who are only interested in demonizing masculinity and dealing with women's issues and women's rights. But, just in case you're not convinced, I've saved the very best bit till last. Now, I'm actually not going to interrupt this bit for two reasons. Firstly, because it's a bit long, although it's very worth going through. And secondly, because I think it really speaks for itself and doesn't need any commentary from me. Now, please keep in mind that the skeptic feminists have promoted NOMAS as a positive men's rights group. Please keep that in mind as you're listening to the following.
What is NOMAS's view of men's rights? Although women, as a group, at least in the West, have made symbolic gains in gender equality, men worldwide still have a highly disproportionate share of privilege, power, money, and personal safety. Those facts are incontestable to any fair observer. NOMAS honors and supports the feminist struggle for equality, and for freedom from old gender requirements. We are proud to be a part of it. The men's rightists, or male supremacy groups, are our ideological polar opposite. They labor and contrive to ridicule and castigate feminism at every opportunity and to maintain the system of male dominance. The self-interested and reactionary men's rightists are perhaps the clearest ideological enemies of male pro-feminists. In 1987 in Hartford, CT, a group of men's rights enthusiasts attended the 12th NOMAS M&M. They distributed materials attacking feminists. Controversy very soon erupted. NOMAS then made a clear and decisive move to sever all connections with the entirely non-compatible men's rights perspective. Men's rightists focus mostly on issues in which male self-interest seems to them imperiled. They are predictably against all alimony, against child support obligations, against any deadbeat dad laws, against rape awareness and rape prevention efforts, against any punishments of domestic abusers. They have developed elaborate how-to kits and offer legal advisors instructing divorcing men how to claim child custody, even if they have no wish to raise the child, as a perfect way to bully and terrorize the mother. To support these ugly, self-serving positions, male supremacists manufacture and work to widely promote facts that are often patently ludicrous, for example that charges of rape are mostly false, and that just as many men are battered and abused by their brutal female spouses, as are women by men. These fantasies has been fervently promoted, despite no visible evidence supporting it, and massive evidence to the contrary. NOMAS is strongly supportive of protective mothers, and in 2015 held our M&M conference in conjunction with the Battered Mothers Custody Conference. Fathers' rights organizations, more accurately termed the male supremacists, or the abusers' lobby, have sought to frame the child custody dispute as one between men and women, or mothers and fathers. In reality, the dispute is between a small group of extreme abusers, who are willing to hurt mothers and children in order to control their partners, versus the large majority of men and women who want to see children protected from abusers. NOMAS believes it is important for good men to stand with the protective mothers movement, to demonstrate that the abuser groups do not speak for all or even most men. The male supremacist movement has successfully sought to manipulate courts, to undermine the limited progress made to prevent domestic violence. A large majority of contested custody cases are actually domestic violence cases, involving the most dangerous abusers. They believe she had no right to leave, and seek to use custody as a way to pressure victims to return, or punish them for leaving. 75% of women murdered by their partners are killed after they leave. In a recent 2-year period, we found news stories about 175 children murdered by fathers involved in contested custody. In many cases, the courts had used standard flawed practices to give the abusers the access they needed to kill the children. They more commonly use custody courts to regain access to their victims. They have enormous success in gaining custody, despite their abuse and limited parental involvement. Some observers have imagined that, because those men hug each other, and speak of men's issues, and brotherhood, we should all be able to get past our minor theoretical differences. We feel quite differently, that men's rightists are a part of the old order, of undisguised patriarchy, of privileged men seeking to hold on to privilege, and to domination of women.
Oh, I see now. Now I understand, right? Apparently fathers don't really love their children, and the only reason they want custody of their children is to get revenge on their ex-wife. I mean, apparently men just don't love their kids. And when people advocate against male circumcision and try to bring awareness about male suicide and male victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault and all those serious topics, apparently when we do that, it's actually about male supremacy and male dominance of women, which is strange. I'm not exactly sure how that argument works, but you know, I'm sure NOMAS wouldn't lie to us. I mean, we can trust them with a name like NOMAS, right? I mean, when I hear NOMAS, for some reason I think of some fundamentalist religion anti-masturbation group, which is extremely ironic considering they're a bunch of fucking wankers. But I have to wonder, I seriously have to ask the question, do the skeptic feminists actually read their citations? Because it seriously doesn't look like it in this case. It's always a good idea to read your citations first, guys. Just a word of advice. But I do have to thank you for showing me NOMAS, because you can be guaranteed that I will be doing more videos on this particular group of fucking assholes in the future. So a big thank you for that. Yeah, but anyway, that was the examples of positive men's rights from the skeptic feminists. unfortunately, they seem to be two groups which are made up of mainly men who are focused on mainly, if not entirely, female issues. Yeah, that would make them women's rights groups, wouldn't it? I mean, they're just male feminists focused on female issues. They're not MRAs. So there's one more comment by the SkepFems that I wanted to address before moving on to segment 3. And it reads,
The skeptic feminists were also putting forward Earl Silverman as an example of a good MRA. Whereas Dawn is a good example of a shelter veteran. Just for your information.
Okay, so you're putting forward Earl Silverman as an example of a good MRA. Alright, fantastic. Which means it's even stranger that you didn't pull up Dawn on her bullshit when she left that fucking disgusting comment about Earl Silverman in your comment section. You didn't say a single word. You didn't give her the slightest bit of criticism. Now, if someone like Felfop, for example, had have come along and left a comment like that in your comment section about a female feminist who was working in domestic abuse or shelters or something like that and had committed suicide, you would have ripped him apart. Now, I'm not suggesting that Felfop would leave such a comment. I only use him as an example because I know you have no problems disagreeing with him. You've done so many times in the past. And that's my point. You just let this comment by Dawn go without even so much as a what the fuck. And I can't help but think this is because you wanted to put Dawn forward as a good example of a typical feminist. And I think you failed miserably, because I don't think she's a good example of a feminist. I think she's an example of a bad feminist. By the way, guys, do you know that Dawn is a TERF? Just to let you know, guys, she's actually a TERF, and she supports trans exclusionary radical feminists like MenEngage. Just thought you'd like to know that, because this is the example of a good feminist that you're putting forward. Now, I can understand you wanting to promote the good work done by good feminists in domestic abuse shelters. Fucking fantastic. If I remember correctly, though, you guys volunteer at domestic abuse shelters, don't you? Don't you teach self-defense or something like that? I'm sure I've heard you say you've done some kind of volunteer work at domestic abuse shelters. It may not be the defense thing. Maybe I'm getting confused. But I'm sure you've done some kind of volunteer work at shelters before. Therefore, you would have come in contact with actual people who work at actual shelters, and you would have some kind of personal relationship with them. You'd know them. Surely someone like that would be a better example to interview. Someone you know, someone you can somewhat vouch for, as opposed to someone it seems you don't know that well, like Dawn. Because I think you guys have dramatically misread this person. I think you have dramatically misjudged her. And I think you've been willfully blind to exactly what type of person she is. And on that note, I think we'll go on to segment 3.
I've got a challenge for Bane, actually.
Ooh, a challenge. This is going to be interesting. By all means, go ahead, Dawn.
Because, and any MRA that or anti-feminist that's listening, I want to challenge them to actually put their money where their mouth is. Instead of making the 942,892nd video against feminism, why don't you start making videos for men? Start talking about the issues that you're dealing with. Start educating other men.
Wow, what a novel idea. Dawn is actually suggesting that men's rights activists like myself actually start talking about men's issues. You know, like I've been doing on my YouTube channel for 3 years now. So Dawn has challenged me to do something I've been doing for years. It's a very, very strange challenge, Dawn. Are you going to challenge NASA next to finally put a man on the moon, or it's just ludicrous, really. And it shows that Dawn has never actually watched my channel, anything on my channel. She's more than happy to judge me, sit in judgment of someone whose content she has never actually viewed, and then pass herself off as open-minded. But continue, Dawn. Continue digging yourself in an even bigger hole. By all means, go right ahead.
You know what? If you're a young guy and you're just starting to have a family, did you know you don't have to circumcise your son? How about making it okay to talk about suicide and making videos that say, you know what, as men, our gender role has taught us we have to be tough. We're not allowed to cry. We have to be providers. We have to be leaders. But the truth is, we don't. And carrying that weight is so heavy sometimes. It's okay to cry. And why aren't they doing anything at all to help men when they just want to shit on feminists?
Yeah, the thing is, Dawn, I've spent hours and hours and hours talking about male circumcision and male suicide and many, many other men's rights issues. You know, the ones that typically get shit all over by feminists, which is why we talk about feminism. Because there is a narrative at the moment that you can only talk about gender issues if you are talking about them from a feminist perspective. And any time anyone tries to talk about it from any other perspective whatsoever, they are told that they're a misogynist and need to shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up for the 50th billionth time!
We're trying really hard to take care of those men in the ways that they can, but there's just some jobs we can't do. Just like I wouldn't expect the MRA to start counseling sexual assault victims. I mean, to put it in perspective, in preparing for today, I was thinking, I'm just going to bounce some ideas off of a friend of mine. Then I realized I had to have this conversation where I would be explaining that there's a guy on YouTube dressed in disguised as a Kool-Aid pitcher talking about a gynarchy. And I thought, I just can't have that conversation with somebody else because it's so ridiculous.
No, I think the word you're looking for there, Dawn, is ironic. Because you seem not to realise that the person you're talking to, Russian Deadpool, dresses as a comic book character, as do the other two skeptic feminists. They all dress as comic book characters. Now, I don't have a problem with this. I do not have a problem with Russian Deadpool dressing as Deadpool, or he can dress as Batman if he wants, or Superman. He can even dress as Wonder Woman if he wants. You know, I really don't care. Because what I'm concerned about is the quality of the argument and the evidence which is put forward to back up that argument. The logo someone has on their channel, the branding they have, the gimmick they dress up as, that isn't important to me. And in case you haven't noticed, YouTube is full of that, and it makes sense. It makes sense to have something which is recognisable for your channel, which is why I picked the poison Kool-Aid. It's now associated with me. It's called branding, Dawn. The other thing I wanted to mention is the fact she accuses me of using the word gynarchy. Now, until the last video in this series, I'd never used the word gynarchy, and the only reason I used it in the last video in this series was in responding to Dawn, who had used the word gynarchy. It's not a word I use, Dawn. I've never said we live in a gynarchy. This is pure fiction on your part.
Like even Bane, the Kool-Aid guy, you were chatting with, he said, feminists leave him alone. They don't even bother making videos against him. Well, I want to say that's because nobody even knows about this in the real world.
Well, Dawn, obviously I'm talking in the context of YouTube. I mean, you even said that I said videos, right? That would suggest YouTube. I wasn't suggesting that Andrea Dworkin's comes back from the dead and challenges me to a debate. Next.
You have to go through a lot of hoops and channels and back alleys to find your way into the anti-feminist argument that's happening online right now.
Well, actually, Dawn, there's this strange and mysterious thing called Google. I'm guessing you've just never heard of it.
It's just not out in the real world very much, and my concern is that's where it's going to start happening, that more and more people are going to start joining their ranks with all of the false information, which is why I'm talking to you.
Says the person who is yet to supply any information to back up any claims that she's made and has been proven to have sock accounts. Next.
But right now, as it stands, feminists are not complaining about Bane because they don't know about him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you certainly do now, don't you, Dawn?
And if you're not, you probably have some reasons to explain why you're not.
Right.
That's how I see it.
It's not a matter of a coexistence. It's a matter of cooperation.
Exactly.
And whether or not it will happen. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, when we talk to Bane and really every anti-feminist that we've had a chat with, they're perfectly lucid, perfectly nice people.
Yeah.
And
they're just wildly misinformed, I think.
Mm.
That's what I want to believe anyway, because then that's fixable.
Yeah.
Oh, that's it. We're just ignorant. That's the problem. Okay. Dawn, let me refer you back to the Propaganda of Toxic Feminism, Part 48. I think I make a pretty good counter-argument there. Next.
I have a lot of experience now in working within the system. I mean, feminists know how to petition the government to get changes. And if...
you mean like feminist groups like the ones in Israel who recently petitioned the government to stop the change to the definition of rape so it could include female rapists? Is that the type of petitioning the government that you mean? Or maybe you're talking about the other groups which are actively trying to shut down female prisons because apparently when a woman commits a crime she shouldn't go to jail. Only men should, apparently. Is that the type of activism you're talking about?
Men's rights would come on board with us. We could just hasten the process even faster if we work together.
How exactly are we meant to work together when there are people on your side, Dawn, who continuously lie about us, who continuously demonize us every fucking chance they get? You know, people like you, Dawn. People exactly like you. Liars like you, Dawn. And unfortunately, too fucking many of them are in the media.
And I found it a little bit entitled, the offers to share space and get along and coexist that Bane and some of the other ones were making. I thought, how entitled is that? We already coexist. You guys are already doing what you want on your channel. Feminists are already on YouTube doing what they want to do. There's no truths to be called. It's either you're on board with social progress or you're not.
Either you're on board with social progress or you're not. Well, we are on board with social progress, Dawn. Social progress is things like allowing fathers to be part of their children's lives, right? You know, shared custody. Have you ever heard of that, Dawn? That would be progressive, would it not? Banning circumcision would be progressive, would it not? Getting help for male victims of domestic abuse or sexual assault, that would also be progressive, wouldn't it? In fact, everything I talk about when it comes to male issues could be classed as progressive. What you mean, though, Dawn, what you mean is that we're not part of your little cult. We don't believe in the same ideology that you believe in. You know, as someone who used to debate a lot of Christians, one thing I used to hear a lot was, Well, the only reason you don't believe in Jesus is because you haven't let God in your heart. And listening to someone like you, Dawn, that sounds very, very similar. You know, if we disagree with you, well, we're just ignorant, we're just uneducated, and we're against social justice. Your brand of social justice, right? Yeah, fucking bullshit. Now, Dawn accused me of being entitled because I suggested that we should maybe find common ground with certain feminists. And I did that in my first chat with the skeptic feminists, which I know Dawn listened to. She left comments in the comment section. This was the start of that chat. I'll let you make up your own minds whether this was entitled or not. And by the way, if you haven't listened to it, I'll leave a link to the full discussion down below, as always.
So where should we start?
Well, the purpose of this friendly conversation is to see if we can solve all the problems in our two movements right here, right now, by figuring out middle ground, a way to cooperate or at least coexist between feminism and the MRM without pointing fingers, simply moving the conversation of gender issues forward on both fronts, hopefully cooperatively. So we're just going to shoot the breeze, I guess.
I think there's a difference between cooperation and coexisting.
Yes.
And I think we can agree on some issues, but I think we'll always disagree on others.
Yes.
And I think that's fine. I don't think there's a problem with different movements, with different ideas. And I think it's good to criticize each other and to keep each other honest.
Agreed. I think that's how movement grows. You know, once it stops being able to accept criticism internally or externally, that's when the movement really starts to stagnate and kind of become worthless and die. So we do appreciate constructive criticism.
What an absolutely fucking monstrous conversation that was. Absolutely fucking terrifying. I'm sure poor Dawn at this very moment is hiding under her bed, terrified, triggered by the entitlement that I showed there. Just absolutely fucking monstrous. Next.
Yeah, I feel like I do represent mainstream feminism. Like I heard Bane say, mainstream feminism is now so corrupt. She doesn't know what mainstream feminism is.
Well, I think we've got a pretty good idea now, Dawn. Thank you very, very much for the example.
Is because you couldn't say that if you understood.
Yeah.
And obviously, if you disagree with the Bible, it's because you don't have enough Jesus in your heart. Right, Dawn? Look, someone can understand something and still disagree with it. Just because feminism is your religion, Dawn, and it's inconceivable for you to think that someone might actually disagree with your faith, it doesn't change the fact that we do. Did you ever stop and consider maybe for a moment, Dawn, that maybe you're the one that's believing in the wrong thing? Maybe your understanding is incomplete or wrong? Or bias? No, of course you haven't. Of course you haven't, because what we're seeing here is someone's faith. Right, Dawn?
When the other side seems to always be really sticklers about, well, the definition of this is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But we can't stick to the definition for feminism for some reason.
Yeah, but it's not the definition of feminism which we criticize. It's all the other stuff. It's the actions of feminists. It's the words of feminists that we criticize. If you want to have a movement for women's rights, in principle, I have no issue with it. Just like I have no issue with someone having a movement for black rights or Asian rights or Jewish rights or men's rights. There's nothing wrong with having a group which is focusing on a particular group's issues. I'd be a hypocrite if I thought there was. But it's the actions of feminists, Dawn. It's the ideology which isn't covered in that fucking dictionary definition. If the only thing that defined feminists was wanting social and economic equality for women, you would find that the vast majority of anti-feminists would disappear overnight. But we both know that it's more than that, don't we, Dawn?
Yeah, some MRAs are more careful about it. Like Bane, he'll occasionally make the distinction, like, well, no, I mean the feminists that I'm against, even though I identify as an all-round anti-feminist, is the feminists who believe in the patriarchy theory, which is just astounding to me because presumably he too is an atheist, and in fact he is. I remember now he said he started the channel in response to some religious garbage that he wanted to respond to.
Close enough.
And what are these religions if not patriarchal? And if these religions do not have any influence in society, then why are you outspoken atheists?
Okay, this topic probably deserves a video of its own, but I'll try to be brief here because this video is already quite long. So to put it simply, there is a difference between patriarchies and the way patriarchy theory is commonly defined by feminists. So let's have a look at the way Dawn actually defines patriarchy.
We actually made a meme of what you were just talking about. We quoted you in this meme. I haven't put it up on the Facebook page yet, but if I'll just read it. Patriarchy is not something feminists are accusing all men of deliberately building, participating in, and profiting from. It is a part of human evolution that developed over centuries. We are simply saying it is time to advance humanity to a place where gender does not divide us. And if that is not egalitarian and humanist and all the rest, I don't really know what is. And we have a picture of two priests walking on the heads of nuns to kind of get to where they're going.
You know what? I believe in giving credit where credit is due, and I think that is a reasonable definition. Now, if we were to get into a more nuanced conversation, I think we might find we disagree on a lot of things, but as a starting point, that's not too bad. It's a pretty good definition, and definitely a lot better than the common definition that I hear from feminists, like this one.
It's kind of a problem. And when you're pregnant, particularly back before modern medicine, you're kind of out of commission for a while. Like, I've never been pregnant, and I don't think I will be unless, aliens becomes a thing. But pregnancy, basically, you have about 4 to 6 months of being, active, depending on how it goes, before you're kind of completely out of it. And that's today. Back then, when, there's limited food and there's very little shelter and not very much in terms of clothing, and you're nomadic, it was pretty hard to get a nice, being out of commission meant that you couldn't do very much. And so, because men got control of the weaponry, because we weren't constantly having kids, men basically got to decide the rules. Because if I have a spear, and someone else is telling me, hey, this is a violation of basic human rights, I have the great response. Hey, guess what? Don't listen to me, I kill you. It's the method used by dictatorships all over the world.
Now, I would agree that pregnancy was most definitely a limiting factor to women in the ancient world. And men typically are physically stronger than women. Now, these two things led to traditional gender roles. Typically, women had less autonomy, but they had more protection, whereas men had more autonomy, but were more disposable. Now, I'm not saying that these gender roles are still relevant today. In fact, I think they're not. And I've spent a lot of time talking about them and why we shouldn't be tied down by them. But they did evolve in the ancient world for a reason, because they worked at the time. Now, the problem with feminist perspective of this is that they see the negative aspects which affected women, and the positive aspects which affected men, and then conclude that it was some grand conspiracy by men against women. And they don't realise, they don't see the connection between levels of autonomy and disposability. If women were really hated and despised and not protected, as feminists often claim, then why weren't they forced to go off and die in wars? Why weren't they disposable? Instead, we had a culture which promoted the hero, the noble man going off to die in a war to defend his homeland and his wife and his children. Now, of course, feminists will say to this, but patriarchy harms men too. Okay, if that's the case, if everyone had a raw deal in the ancient world, then why do you only focus on it affecting women? The other issue when feminists bring up patriarchy is the flexibility in which the way it's used, the flexibility of the definition. For example, I've seen feminists say before that the fact that mothers are more likely to get custody of their children, that's a reflection of the patriarchal oppression of women, because it's forcing the role of mother onto women, and it's a societal expectation that women be mothers. Mind you, the mothers are choosing this, but it's still somehow men oppressing women into that role. Yet at the same time, I've seen feminists claim that if a father wants custody of his children, then he's exercising patriarchal privilege and oppressing his poor ex-wife. He's oppressing the mother of his children because he's trying to take her children away from her. Of course, missing the point that they're also his children. But it's amazing how flexible the term is, how in one instance something which women want and get and could be considered a privilege is somehow seen as patriarchal oppression, yet when a man gets that, on the rare occasions that a man gets it, well, that's also patriarchal oppression of women. It's almost like everything is the oppression of women and patriarchy. Everything's patriarchy, apparently. And see, that's the problem. Feminists see androcentrism, and they conclude that that's the only thing that's in existence, and then they ignore gynocentrism, and they pretend it doesn't exist, or they twist it into somehow still being oppression, even when it's in their favour. It's absolutely fucking amazing. Yeah, so the point is, Russian Deadpool, to sum up, because I've talked about this too long and I want to finish this video, but to sum up, it's a very, very complex topic, and it's much more complex than just saying, well, there's been religions who are patriarchal, therefore feminist patriarchy theory is legit. It's a lot more complex than that. It's a lot more nuanced, and I've wasted enough time in this already very long video talking about it, so I think I'll finish here. Otherwise, I'm just gonna get more and more complex and take longer and longer to try to explain it. And I've already explained it numerous times in videos in the past, in any case. So I'd just be repeating myself. And on that note, I think that's it as far as the Dawn Deadpool saga is concerned. I think I've covered everything now. So unless there's some new update or something, as far as I'm concerned, the topic is done.
That's again why I wonder, okay, well then should we keep giving them a voice? Because really, if we just ignore them, they could go play by themselves in their own corner and they're not going to bother anybody. But my concern is, though, that they seem to get an awful lot of subscribers, and I don't know about YouTube really, but I do assume that a lot of them are very young viewers, impressionable viewers, and I think about the people like the Elliot Rodgers of the world, and the Marc Lépine, who shot up a university here in Montreal because he hated women. I feel like they're feeding into those people, and nobody's challenging them. But I don't know if it's helpful or not for us to give them a voice. Like, when they willingly refuse to entertain or talk about or even compromise even a little bit, they're just not even willing to educate themselves on the most basic feminist theory.
Right.
Like, patriarchy just happened. Nobody's saying there's a big conspiracy to implicate all men.
So, because men got control of the weaponry, because we weren't constantly having kids, men basically got to decide the rules. Because if I have a spear and someone else is telling me, hey, this is a violation of basic human rights, I have the great response. Hey, guess what? Don't listen to me, I kill you.
It's just how humanity has evolved, and we find ourselves in this place where now we can look back and go, men have had the rule of things for a really long time. We need to make room at the table for women, and we need to make room at the table for Native people, and we need to make room at the table for disabled people. All we're doing is asking them to shove over and make room for some other people.
So, sexism. Human beings have been around for about 130 to 150,000 years, give or take. And every single society in that time period has been sexist against women. Men have been in charge in every country, every time period, ever. There's never been a matriarchal society. Now, a few of you might be bringing up some of those, a few Native American tribes or tribes in northern India or in Thailand that are supposedly matriarchal. No, they're not. Here's why. They are matrilineal, which is something else, and I'll get to that in a second, but a matriarchal society would be one where women made up most of the military, owned most of the wealth, and had all the political leadership. That's not true. Let's look at a society that pretty much everyone can agree is patriarchal. Let's say Saudi Arabia today. Women can't hold positions of power. The military is entirely made up of men. All the wealth is owned by men. Women can't go out of. Women can't, if a woman goes driving without a man, she might get whipped. I'm going to assume that most of us can agree that that is sexist, that is male dominated. A matriarchy would be a female version of that, where most of the wealth was owned by women, the military was primarily made up by women, and the political positions were women. Now, some people, there's certain tribes where the official leader is a woman, and people will say, well, that's matriarchal. I'm like, no, it's not, because what's officially in power and what the reality is the same thing. In Tokugawa, Japan, the emperor was officially in charge, but the shogun called the shots because the army belonged to the shogun. There's never one of these societies where the military is primarily women and serve women's interests.